So here we are for another episode of Words with Friends. What is Words with Friends? It's where I speak with some friends about some words. And today I have Michael Bungay Stanier, and we're talking about coaching. Welcome, Michael.
Yes, this should be Words with Friends drinking coffee. And I failed to bring myself a coffee, but otherwise, okay.
I have mine.
I just didn't think this through, but never mind.
What I am glad is, though, that we compared notes this morning about what color we should wear, right? That we should definitely be in black T-shirts. And I think it's the first time I've ever seen you, Michael, not wearing something brightly colored, garish, etc. I didn't know you had a plain black T-shirt.
Well, wait a second. Is it brightly colored or is it garish? Because there's a touch of judgment in one of those words. That's all I'm saying. You're right. And I hadn't quite cottoned on that this was a video, or else I would just gone downstairs and put on one of my box of crayons shirts. But okay, this is me rocking the black classic thing, but I get to show off my colorful tattoo at least, so that there's something there.
There we go. So today we're talking coaching, though. And why have I got you talking coaching? Well, you wrote a book called The Coaching Habit.
I did.
So I'm guessing you might know a thing or two about this word. Help me and everybody else listening in. What is coaching?
That is a great question, because it is a word that lots of people have heard and they know about, but nobody's very certain about exactly what it means, because it shows up in all sorts of different contexts, right? It can show up in the sporting world, of course, which is, okay, it's somebody with a whistle, making people run up and down, kind of organizing teams. It can show up in the life coaching world, which is like, how do I help people get better lives? It can show up in the executive coaching world, which is about, how do I help business people succeed? They can show up in the ADHD world, going, how do I help people focus? So it's one of those words that everyone's like, I think I know what it means, but I'm not exactly sure. And then it's complicated even further by the fact that everybody who is selling coaching services, I'm one of those people, kind of wants to invent their own definition of coaching, going, no, this is what I mean by coaching. It's better and it's special. So you've got that going on as well. So let me give you 3 ways into thinking about coaching. The first is from a guy called Sir John Whitmore. He's a British guy, one of the early champions of coaching. Sadly, he died just a little earlier this year. Wrote one of the real famous books on coaching called Performance Coaching, or Coaching for Performance. And he says, I'm going to get this probably slightly wrong, but it's coaching is helping people unlock their own potential. It's helping people learn rather than teaching them. So that gives you one way into thinking about coaching. I did this thing once where I looked up the top 20 definitions of coaching, and then I kind of A/B tested it, and that was the one that became most popular or resonated with most people.
Okay.
Here's another way of thinking about coaching. It's kind of the process of coaching. And the process of coaching is a new insight, either about yourself or about the situation at large, leads to positive behavior change. In other words, action. You do something differently as a result of that insight, which leads to an increased impact, which hopefully circles back around, and the increased impact generates new insights about yourself and or about the situation. So there's the coaching cycle. That's another way of thinking about it. The way I talk about it most often, because for us, we're focused on helping people not necessarily be coaches, because not everybody wants to be a coach, but to be more coach-like. And for us, it's a behavior change, and it's, can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving just a little bit more slowly? So then you have a behavior, you have a process, and you have an outcome. So you've got 3 different kind of components that in some way make up what coaching is.
Okay. So you've clarified coaching by confusing me even further by explaining that what there is like a plethora of stuff to this. But
exactly.
I thought coaching was posting things on Instagram of motivational quotes from other people.
That is a particularly niche and strangely ineffective form of coaching. I mean, that kind of speaks into that whole inspiration/motivation industry as well, which sometimes works and quite often doesn't work that well. I mean, it's so much this unpacks an enormous thing. I'm like, where do I start? Because it starts with, I mean, the things that come to mind as soon as you say that, first of all, this whole idea of motivation, and can you motivate others, or do people have to find motivation within?
Right.
Secondly, there's this whole piece around the very North American or Western society approaches, we're all individuals and it's all up to us and we're all self-motivated just by who we are and all of that sort of stuff, as opposed to understanding that we are nothing without the others around us. And that there's so much good science that says actually how you perform is entirely dependent on the people who are around you and with whom you work. So you've got this kind of weird tension between, I feel it within myself. I'm the master of my own destiny. But then you read the science and you're like, well, actually so much of it is preordained, or how you're born, or how your brain is wired, or who you're working with. And then there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. Inspiration, the etymology for that, the word origin of that is breathed into by God. And I love that, kind of that breath of light or inspiration. I don't even believe in God, but I love that idea of breathed into by spirit. So you got motivation, you got inspiration, you got, are you by yourself or is it with the team? There's a whole bunch of paradox floating around here. So now you're even more confused, right, Phil?
Well, a little, but I'm kind of starting to piece this all together. And I wonder if we can simplify a little.
Please.
Tell me the difference between like a coach, a mentor, and a trainer. How do we see difference between those three things?
So let me start with a mentor first. So mentor gets their name from the Greek character Mentor, who is part of the Odyssey. And that character in that story was the wise older person who kind of gave out wisdom and guidance and insight to Ulysses and his team. The way it has kind of echoed down for us now is similar, which is like when you find a mentor, it's often somebody who has in some way walked the same path as you, or a path that you want to work, and they've got gray hair and they've collected the scars and they have stories to tell you. However, there's a couple of ways of showing up as a mentor. One is I'm just going to sit on my throne of wisdom and pontificate about how things aren't as hard as they were in my day, and you got to do it the hard way or else it doesn't really count, blah, blah, blah. Or you could get mentors who are brilliant at being more coach-like, allowing curiosity to drive the conversation. And I think that starts separating it out from coaching, which is this whole general approach of, if you hire a coach, you're basically hiring somebody to help you walk the path. And they haven't necessarily walked the same path as you. I mean, lots of people I've coached in the past, I've never had their job. I've never had their level of seniority. I certainly don't have their sector experience. But I do have a way of being a sounding board, being a place of wisdom, being a source of tools or insights or whatever it might be to help people achieve what they have set out to achieve. And then I think a trainer is somebody who can also offer up more coach-like conversations. I mean, I was working out this morning kind of with a trainer, and I was talking to Jeremy, and he's like, the difference between rhetorical questions and real questions and blah, blah, blah. So a trainer is, I think, somebody who perhaps, I don't know, actually. I don't know how a trainer fits in here. Maybe it's, I tend to think of them more in the kind of the physical realm, which is like, okay, I'm trying to lose 30 pounds, or I'm trying to deadlift 400 pounds or something like that. And they kind of bring a coach-like approach at their best, combined with technical expertise to help you achieve those particular goals as well.
Okay. So a trainer might be teaching you something perhaps, or perhaps whipping you into shape to be able to then do something. Could kind of fall into those two camps.
Well, see, then you go, well, I reckon trainer, mentor, coach, they're all playing a role of teacher in some form or other. So this is like, you should retitle this episode "Confusing Words with Michael." What I've done so far has gone, they're all difficult and about the same, but different.
I'm wondering here, and I'm just kind of talking this out with you. There's no script here, etc. I'm wondering if
No kidding, people watching. There is no script here.
Does training have some level of instruction to it more so? Is that where training perhaps has an element of difference, is to say, I'm instructing you down a certain path in a certain direction. Maybe that's a variable.
Yeah, so it could be the trainer comes in with some more subject matter expertise going, here's exactly what I know now. You go, well, isn't that a mentor? And you're like, well, I'm sure a mentor could apply some training, and a mentor could apply some coaching, and a mentor could just provide some general pontification and advice giving around that. But then you get into this whole idea of, well, what is the difference between teaching and helping people learn? And of course, most of us have this experience of being taught, which is somebody stands in the front of a room and downloads content. And what's depressing about this is there's a ton of research that says that just doesn't work very well. And it works even less well in a world where you can basically look up anything you want in terms of what are the facts or what are the kind of facts on Google or whatever it might be. So help teaching tends to be, at its most blunt, kind of I've got content, I need to download it from me to you. Helping people learn is when you start to understand actually what does it take to have somebody adopt a new insight, a new change of behavior. And downloading doesn't work so well there. Then there's lots of good evidence that says being more coach-like, helping people find their own path is a wonderful way to actually help them learn and to help the learning stick.
Got it. So I'm trying to just wrap around and just create some form of summary for people on this trainer or mentor coach thing. And I'm getting that, like, maybe a trainer might say, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
A mentor might say, here's what I did when I was in a similar scenario.
Yeah.
And the coach might say, well, what could you do? I
love that. My tweak might be, a trainer might go, here's what you should do. Let me show you how.
Right.
So they have a degree of being able to role model. I know when I'm working out, for instance, my guy will say, actually, here's how I want you to do the deadlift, and you need to do it like this and then like that, or whatever it might be. And that role modeling allows me to understand. But I guess that's just another form of role modeling and teaching like that. But yeah, I like that distinction, Phil. That's perfect.
I hear you. And you're talking a lot here about being more coach-like. I mean, you said something earlier on as well about the fact that, you spend time with your coach. And it's interesting that, some people have labeled themselves a coach, but I think more people could be more coach-like. That's what I'm hearing from you. So if I'm listening to this interview right now, where does coaching fit into my daily routine, regardless of what my daily routine might be? Where does it fit where people perhaps don't even see it fitting right now?
Yeah. So the starting point is to go, is it worthwhile being more coach-like? I mean, why would I bother doing that? And, I spend most of my world in the corporate world, but the three vicious circles we talk about that most managers get caught into, I think actually ring true for lots of us, beyond our kind of more narrow work lives. And the three vicious circles we talk about for managers is the first is having an over-dependent team. So that just might be people who are overly dependent on you. And you get this whether you're a parent, sometimes a kid, sometimes a teacher, whoever it might be. And the more you give them advice, the more they come to you advice, the more they come to advice, the more you give them advice, and they become overly dependent on your guidance, your wisdom, your solution, your support, whatever it might be. And we've all had that experience of feeling drained or exhausted and frustrated by relationships that kind of show up like that.
Okay.
Second vicious circle is a sense of overwhelm. There's just too much going on, for the managers in this world. There's like too many emails, too many meetings, too many KPIs, too many obligations. But there's barely anybody I know who's going, my life is just weirdly empty and relaxing right now, as opposed to going, I just feel that kind of little tremor of anxiety most of the time because I'm not quite on top of everything.
Right.
And then the third circle, which I think is also true for lots of people, is a sense of disconnect from purpose, right? The less impact you have, the more you kind of resign yourself to whatever, the more you resign yourself, the less impact you have. And you kind of lost maybe Simon Sinek would ask really to start with why. Why am I doing this? What's the bigger game that I'm playing here? What am I doing with my life? And I actually think that being more coach-like is a way of breaking 1, 2, or 3 of those 3 vicious circles, depending on which one rings most true for you. So that's the starting point for the why of it, which is, okay, so why would you bother shifting your behavior to be more coach-like? Now, when we teach coaching skills, we say, look, there are 3 core principles. Be lazy, be curious, be often. And they're a bit provocative, and particularly that first one, be lazy, because, if you're a friend of Phil Jones, if you're Phil Jones, you're not lazy. If you're a friend of Phil Jones, you're not lazy. If you're watching a podcast, TV series with Phil Jones, you're probably not lazy either. But the truth is you pay a price for the work that you're doing. And be lazy really means, can you stop rushing in, jumping in, driving in to provide the answer, the solution, the person who fixes things.
Right.
Being curious is just a recognition that most of us are advice-giving maniacs. I mean, honestly, we love to give advice. You know, Phil, I know in your corporate world, you're like an expert in sales, right? That's the thing that you champion and help people with. And my guess is that so much of what you're trying to do is not just give them exactly what to say in those sales conversations, but as a basic sales dynamic, which is stop selling people stuff.
Right, that's
stop
it.
rushing in to tell them the thing you've got to sell them. Stay interested and engage with them a little bit longer, so that when you finally do get to make a recommendation, when you finally got permission to make a recommendation, your recommendation is a really good one because you've heard what's going on.
Right.
And that just plays out for everybody because you know it. You know, if somebody starts talking to you, you don't know who they are. You don't know what they're talking about. You don't know who the people are involved. And after about 20 seconds, you're like, I think I know what you need to do. Let me interrupt and tell you some ideas that I've got. So that's the be curious. We talk about it as kind of controlling or managing or taming your advice monster. The assumption is that as soon as somebody starts talking, your advice monster guy basically pops up out of the dark and goes, I'm going to add value now by telling you stuff. And then the be often piece is to recognize that actually any interaction with somebody can be, remember the definition, can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving just a little bit more slowly? So by be often, we go like, you know, in a conversation like this, on the phone, in person, by email, by text, you know, if you respond with a question rather than with a whole bunch of advice or opinion or fact, sometimes that's a more powerful way to act. So
I got it.
All of which is a long answer to your question about, so when can you do coaching? I'm like, if you make coaching kind of less precious, less important, less, we're coaching each other, and just a way of showing up with each other, of being with each other, then opportunities for being more coach-like are ever present.
Okay. So we're talking about coaching as becoming something that you do as opposed to something that you are.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, we have talked about in the past, this idea of we want to make coaching a small C thing rather than a big C thing, because there's just a lot of baggage that comes with coaching. And if I say to you, okay, Phil, great, it's time for our coaching session, so I'm going to coach you now. There's some part of your brain that goes, I don't
want that. No, resist.
But if I just go, hey, Phil, what's on your mind? You're like, then we're into a conversation. It's just a conversation fueled by curiosity rather than by my need to prove how smart I am in this conversation.
Let's take an abstract scenario as well, something that's maybe slightly unusual to the type of typical work that you do. So I've just moved into a new home. I'm here in my new office right now. We had some guests over the weekend. And the one thing that happened is every time anybody walked into a room of ours, the thing they launch into is all these things we should or could do with the space without having any understanding or knowledge of how we plan to use it or live. So how do you...
To be fair, you do not have very good taste. So I can imagine it's very hard to resist that. Oh my God, really? The black velvet paintings, Phil? Are we not beyond those yet? But it's another story.
That's it. Now everybody's going to be thinking I have black velvet paintings. But hey, that was in a past life. That was a very special occasion.
Okay, fair enough.
Tell me, but how does somebody play into a scenario like that and be more coach-like?
Well, the first question is, do you want to? Is it worth it?
Right.
Like, do you want to take this on? Because one of your options is to engage in this conversation.
Right.
And another option is to go, random people giving me random advice. Why don't I just step aside and let that advice go through and we'll just wrap it up.
I spend so many of my days doing that though. It's like crazy frustrating where people are saying you should and you could and you would. And I just filter it out and hand select some key people that I allow to talk into my life in different ways.
Yeah. So it's really worth asking yourself, which of the relationships are worth fighting for? Which ones do you want to re-engineer so they have a different way of showing up for you?
Okay.
And, you know, one ways of distinguishing more terms, because, you know, we haven't got enough terms on the table yet, what with training, teaching, mentoring, coaching, whatever, is the difference between coaching and feedback. So for me, coaching is an ongoing, every day, every moment can be a bit more coach-like by staying curious longer, action advice a bit more slowly. Feedback is when you're like, I got to tell you something.
Right.
And then how do you tell them that thing? And lots of people have a degree of anxiety around feedback because it's a scary conversation. It's a bit confrontational. Maybe there'll be shouty or tears or whatever it might be. And we often choose to step away from those slightly trickier conversations. I use a really simple model to help me with this because I have the same anxieties. That derives from something called nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg is the guy who created that. And the quick summary of it would be this: everything in communication has 4 different elements in it. The first element is the data. So these are the facts. These are the things that you can actually point to and say, this is true. The second element is how you're feeling about the situation. And I work with kind of 5 core feelings because they kind of remind me of the 7 dwarfs because most of them rhyme. So mad, sad, glad, ashamed, and afraid. You know, there are other models that have 6 or 7, but those 5 work pretty well for me. The third element is judgments. So those are your opinions about what's going on. And actually you have judgments about the other person, typically lots of judgments about the other person. Like you have judgments about yourself and you have judgments about the situation at hand. So it's judgments from 3 different points of view. And then the final of the 4 elements is what do you want or what do you need? So it's the kind of the request you might want to make as part of this. And in any conversation, it's really useful to A, make sure you know what the data is, what are the facts, and B, know what you want. You know, once you know what you want, things get a whole lot clearer around this. Then with every conversation, you've got, if you like, a choice to go, do I want to deepen this conversation, make it more relationship-based by adding feelings and judgments as part of that as well. So if you wanted to engage in the person who's come into your bedroom and gone, really, black silk sheets and a 4-poster bed and all this velvet, really, Phil, what is wrong with you? You know, one option is you just go, yeah, I know, and you don't engage. But if you want to engage, you then go, well, first is what you want. And there might be a number of things you want. One is like, I would like you not to give me advice on interior decoration, right? Because you're actually wearing a bright yellow suit right now. And if you think that looks good, you're also confused. So it's not like you have taste. It could be that I'd like you to give me more specific guidance, which is like, what's the one thing you'd like me to do differently? Or tell me about your sources of inspiration for your amazing taste or whatever it might be. And then you go, well, what's the data? You go, okay, well, the data is, they said, they came into the bedroom and they pointed at the bed and went, I don't like black silk sheets, right? Then there's like feelings and judgments. How are you feeling about that? Well, I'm feeling angry because I'm like, how dare they? Don't they know black is the new white? Right. Exactly. You're feeling sad because you're like, yeah, these are the only things that I brought over from my UK house and they kind of make me sad and nostalgic seeing them. It might be glad, that's unlikely because you're a bit irritated. Ashamed, well, that's obvious. I understand why you'd feel ashamed about your black silk sheets. Afraid, maybe not so much. So you got a kind of little swirl of emotions and like, okay, I notice those. You might have judgments. You have judgments about them. Like they have no taste. Who are they? How dare they? How rude. That's not appropriate, not guest-like. You might have judgments about yourself, which is like, I've never quite figured out my interior decoration style. I'm not confident. I'm easily influenced by the 1970s, whatever movies. And then you have judgments about the situation at hand, which is, I should never bring people on a tour around my house because it just invites people to make rude comments about my stuff. Right. So now you've got 4 buckets of stuff that you can pull from, and you get to decide what you want to actually share. And I would say that typically it's really useful knowing what your judgments are because you typically don't want to share most of those judgments. Typically they're not that helpful for the conversation. But at least by knowing them, you're less likely to be sabotaged by them in the conversation.
Right.
So then you go, okay, you could just simply say, hey, look, I appreciate where you're going with this, but here's my request. Actually, we're still in early days here. Please just don't make suggestions about interior decoration. Could be as simple as that. Or maybe it's I'm there, I'm making the rude comments, and you're like, hey, look, Michael, I've got a judgment. My judgment is that I really appreciate our friendship, and I appreciate your exquisite taste, Michael, because you truly are a tastemaker, and I love everything you do. But my judgment is actually your opinions make me a little self-conscious about my own choices. So, and I'm feeling a bit frustrated and sad about that. So here's my request is like, tell me the stuff you love in this house. Don't tell me the stuff you don't love.
Right.
So you've got different conversations you can have depending on what you want with these people.
So let's just flip that around the other way, because everything I've just heard in that is like, if somebody's going to give you advice that you didn't want, i.e. feedback you didn't want, actually taking the responsibility of tackling that in a constructive way, in the way that you've just been able to lay out, it's hard freaking work, right? It's like, whoa, that's a big deal. And to leave that in a way where you don't break something or you don't leave the other parties feeling damaged in some way takes a lot of skill and a lot of responsibility. How do we flip this in the other direction though, so that if we're the person leaning into these kind of scenarios, that we don't create this hostility in the first place? What can we do, if we play the role of the person coming into the home or a parent leaning into a situation where you're feeling like you want to give advice, but instead of giving advice, what do you do instead? Yeah.
Well, there is lots and lots of good places for giving advice. So one of the ways that I'm really conscious about exactly how I define coaching is not never give advice. It's slow down the rush to action and advice giving.
Right.
And I think it's really useful to go to effectively just in a kind of non-weird way, just trying to ask permission. I mean, just start by asking questions.
Okay.
Hey, Phil, what are you happy with about this house? What do you love about this? What do you, it's like, are you looking for, I know it's early days, so are you looking for thoughts around what people could do here? Or you're like, no, I'm totally happy. You're like, I'm totally happy, like perfect. Oh my God, the black silk sheets are a disaster. But it's like, it's not my place he doesn't want advice on it. So partly I'm just, this is a muscle that I've worked on, and it comes through practice, is just stay curious a bit longer, ask some questions before you jump into advice. Then if you're going to give advice, just check in with them. It's like, would it be useful if I gave you some thoughts here?
Right.
Would it be useful if, I've got some stuff bubbling up in my head about what's going on. Should I share them now or later or never? What would be best for you?
Right. So it's like curiosity and then permission, right? That's what you're saying is be curious. Right. And then before you leap, ask for permission and check that it's framed in a way that is useful. And I mean, I got a great piece of advice.
Let me add one other thing, Phil, as a kind of a sort of final part of that. I think there's something also valuable for you and for them to offer up advice in a way that allows both of you to back away from it if it's not very useful.
Okay.
So I say things like, look, this is just me firing from the hip, and I may be totally wrong, and there may be nothing useful here at all, but let me just put this down on the table and just see what we think about it.
Okay.
And now if they go, that's ridiculous, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I kind of thought it might be, and that's fine. And now I'm not forced to defend it, and they're not forced to accept it. We both get to go, well, that's a pile of whatever on the table. We'll walk away from that. So it's about making sure we both maintain face and we both have that option.
That's exactly what I was just thinking there. It's like going back to a Carnegie principle of allowing the other person to save face, right?
Yeah, exactly. You never want somebody to be backed in a corner, because then you're backed in a corner and you're both fighting hard to maintain your status. And it's really hard to do that if you're you're backed into a corner like that.
And I suppose you can even encourage other people to be more coach-like if you're looking for their advice on something by giving them sometimes the frame, letting them know the lens that you'd like them to look at it. So, I see people share a lot of stuff on social media that is, tell me what you think. What are your thoughts around this? And it's this open door for feedback without direction. Whereas instead it might be better to say, this is what I'm looking to produce and this is what I would like it to be able to do. And this is what I'm hoping it to achieve. And
and then the flip side of that is when you go, I go, Phil, I got some feedback for you about how this podcast is going. But before I leap into it, because I definitely want to give it to you, how do you best like your feedback?
Medium rare.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what some people say. Lots of people say. Most people just go, just give it to me straight. And you're like, perfect. Because so many of us build up this whole, I'm going to do a 25-minute lead-in to justify everything before I tell you the thing I want to tell you. But sometimes people go, you know, honestly, I'm feeling a bit tender about this. It's my brand new book. There are three types of feedback. There's appreciation, there's coaching, and there's evaluation. This comes from a great book called Thanks for the Feedback. And actually, it's really useful to know what sort of feedback people are looking for. Sometimes they're looking for appreciation, which is like, just tell me what you love.
Right.
Because that's what I need right now. Sometimes they're looking for evaluation, which is like, tell me how I'm doing. Tell me how I'm doing relative to everybody else. And you can see that if you're looking for evaluation and somebody goes, no, you're wonderful, it's great, carry on, I love this. You're like, that doesn't help me because I want to know how I'm ranked compared to Phil and Bob and Joan and whoever else. So I know whether I'm going to get my bonus or not. And sometimes it's coaching, which is like, help me figure this out.
Okay.
And understanding those three different types of feedback can be really helpful. But most people don't have that clarity, so you've got to help them get there.
Got it. So appreciation, evaluation, or coaching. And that's such gold, Michael. That's really valuable for everybody listening in. I know our time's precious today. So let's just come back to one question about coaching. What is it not? What is coaching not?
It's great. Great question. It's not, basically it's not telling people what to do. Or at least in my world, it's not telling people what to do. And that includes fake questions. Because there's this whole kind of murky ground, which is like, I kind of want to tell you what to do, but I've been told I shouldn't tell you what I want you to do. So now I'm going to ask you questions until you finally understand what I want you to do. So the questions are like, hey, have you thought of, or did you try, or have you considered?
Okay.
None of that is coaching. All of that is advice with a question mark attached on the end. So you fool nobody. But I really think, honestly, I wouldn't mind if the word coaching kind of just dissolved and went away, because it comes with baggage. It confuses as much as it elucidates. Think of it just as a behavior, which is, it's actually more beneficial for you and it's more beneficial for the person you're talking to. If you want to deepen your conversation, if you want to have a richer conversation and a richer relationship, to be genuinely curious about what's actually going on, rather than to feel that you have the need to tell them about everything, because your opinion's the right one.
Yeah, I hear you. And so we're going to scrap the word coaching. And I just wanted one real life example that we could probably all stop doing, in that thinking we're asking questions, but we're really giving advice.
Yeah.
Is the classic kind of, do you want Chinese food tonight?
Right.
Which really means I want Chinese food.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hoping we can do that, please.
Right, exactly.
So that's a kind of classic example where we lean in with a question, which was really a statement disguised.
So it kind of pulls to a bigger thing for me, which is, at Box of Crayons, if you had to kind of give the big movement that we'd love to make in this world, is to help people develop adult to adult relationships with those with whom they work with and interact with. And of course that sounds good, but it's like, but what does that even mean? And one of the best definitions I've heard about an adult to adult relationship is being able to ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no.
Okay.
And it turns out that sounds easy, and it's actually pretty difficult.
Right. Because
so often we don't actually know what we want. It's one of my kind of core questions from the Coaching Habit book is number 4, what do you want? It's hard to actually be really clear about asking for what you want. And then it's hard to sometimes feel that you got permission to say no. So rather than going, hey, how do you feel about Chinese tonight? You're like, I'd love Chinese tonight. Are you up for that?
Right.
And then the other person gets to go, honestly, I'm not up for Chinese, because it's like, it stains the black silk sheets whenever you eat it in bed, and it's like hard to wash, and the dry cleaning bills are horrendous, and so on.
Your examples are wonderful. I know I didn't ask for permission to give that feedback, but I thought I'd just put it out there and shoot straight.
I'll take it, yeah.
Michael, how do people find out more about you? I'm sure there's people thinking, who is this crazy dude? What's he all about? like help us understand that, where you can help people, what they can get to help from you, and how to understand more about MBS.
Well, look, the thing I'm best known for is the Coaching Habit book. So that's available at lots of bookstores and certainly on Amazon. If you want to kind of get into kind of a bunch of free content and stuff you can pillage from the website, thecoachinghabit.com. If you are curious about the programs we have for corporations and organizations, boxofcrayons.com. And if you just want to learn a little more about me and kind of my side projects outside Box of Crayons, michaelbungaystanier.com. I have this complicated double-barreled name. When I got married, I took my wife's name, and it's been confusing for everybody ever since. I once got a letter addressed to Professor Michael Banging Stanier, which was exactly not what to say in terms of using a Phil Jonesism. But yeah, michaelbungaystanier.com. And those are the 3 key websites. From there, you'll find everything else.
Awesome. Awesome. Michael, you are awesome. And I have one final question for you, which is, what are you listening? You there?
I am, yeah, I am.
You sure? Because I'm going to hit you a final question. It could be awkward if you don't catch it.
No, that's fine. I've got, part of my charm is these enormous ears that are designed not to have little headphone things stuck in them. But yeah, I'm here with you now.
Awesome. Michael, what's your favorite word and why?
You know, I'm a word guy. I love words. So, you know, I have a master's degree in modern literature, so I collect great words. Here's the word that I like at the moment, eponymous. So eponymous means the thing that's named after the person who created it. So Michael Bungay Stanier and his eponymous website, michaelbungaystanier.com. And I just like it because it's just got a rhythm to it. I love that. I just love the sound of it.
That's a good enough reason. You just love the way that it sounds.
Just eponymous. It'd be like, and if you play that in Scrabble, there's got to be a lot of points involved. So that's also good.
So a good reason to like a word is that it plays out well in Scrabble. And I guess challenge to everybody is to try and use that with context over the coming weeks and days.
Hey, what's your favorite word?
That comes out later on at the end of the series. But,
okay.
I tell you what it is. Right now, favorite word today is a 4-letter word called time. It's the thing that I'm looking for more of in my life. Yeah. And it sits right here. It's like you know, saying no to more things and choosing to have more time.
My advice... Yeah. Yeah, my advice is stop doing 400 keynote speeches a year, and miraculously time will appear.
Yeah, but I love it.
That's why I'm the number 3 coaching guru in the world, for insights like that.
Whoa. Thank you, Mike.
Perfect.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. Loved having you on the show, and I'll catch up with you for some drinks sometime soon.
That sounds wonderful. See you soon.